Cliff Lambert's home is his sanctuary, his dream.
Good morning. Voila. You look happy.
The touches that he put on in his house were very unique.
He had beautiful paintings up and down the hallway.
He liked to show that he had money.
The house became kind of famous in his neighborhood.
But sanctuaries can be desecrated.
What's happening? What's going on?
I'm so sorry. There were many doors and many ways into that house. He was starting to get scared.
And dreams derailed.
You don't know who these people are.
When death comes knocking, no one is safe. It's known as Hollywood's desert getaway.
Palm Springs is pretty diverse. It has a big vacation population, a big destination population.
Hollywood created Palm Springs, in the 50s as a place where movie stars and people of the like can come and play. They all bought homes in this neighborhood. So the homes are all very big, and they're all very lavish.
An ideal setting for longtime resident Clifford Lambert.
He had a lot of movie stars for friends.
He had pictures everywhere of movie stars. And I would ask him, do you really know these people? And he's like, Eddie, all these people that stayed in my house. He had stories for everything. It was really fun. The house became kind of famous in his neighborhood because it was the only house built of its stature.
Here, people watch out for each other.
Clifford Lambert's neighbors did keep an eye out on his house.
One day, his neighbor across the street notices that Cliff's gate is ajar. And he's concerned because things just don't seem right with that door like that. So he calls the police.
Detective Simon Min and his partner arrive minutes later.
We checked outside the property, we checked the mailbox, we checked the trash cans, we checked everywhere where we could find something. We looked for a reason to go inside, and we didn't have any at the time. We couldn't kick the door in to go check because we didn't have enough information at that time. Since we didn't have it, we left.
But the next morning, Clifford Lambert's name comes up again.
Hello, I'd like to file a missing persons report for Clifford Lambert.
The missing persons report was filed by Clifford Lambert's friend.
Cliff and I talk every day, and now he's just vanished. He blew off our plans yesterday. I went to his house last night. He wasn't there.
I called my friend and I said, something's not right. And I said, Cliff is gone. And my friend was like, you need to go to the police department and file a police report, missing persons report. And so that's what I did.
But Cliff's a grown man, and there's no evidence of anything criminal.
Police initially did not take that report very seriously because they often get reports of missing people, and within 24 hours, the person will show up. They had no leads and they had nothing to follow up on at that point.
But police do ask Cliff's neighbors to get in touch if they notice any suspicious activity. It's not long before they do.
On January 7th, 2009, Clifford Lambert's neighbors noticed a U-Haul parked in front of his house and two men were emptying the contents from Clifford Lambert's house.
They called Palm Springs Police Department right away, and that sent detectives and police running to the house.
When police did arrive, one man was still at the scene.
What's going on here? Who are you?
Miguel Bustamante, just moving some things.
Is this your house?
He told me
Have some ID?
that he was responding to an ad on Craigslist asking for assistance to move a house out of the area, and he was provided with a key and $1,000 and a U-Haul.
Just doing my job, man,
And sure enough, when police enter the home, it's clear this is no smash and grab.
We entered and we cleared the house, but we were unable to find Clifford.
They found most of Clifford Lambert's belongings stacked up in the dining room and the laundry room, readily accessible for exit through the garage.
When calls to Cliff's cell phone go unanswered, police check out Bustamante's residence, a nearby motel. The contents of the room tell a different story than Miguel does.
We found bottles of wine, shoes, driver's license, birth certificate.
Almost every inch of that hotel room contained Clifford Lambert's belongings, his life.
That's more than enough for police to arrest Miguel Bustamante.
He was charged with burglary, possession of stolen property, and the property that belongs to Clifford Lambert.
Do you know where Mr. Lambert is?
Bustamante refuses to talk.
We pretty much hit a wall. He wouldn't provide any information.
They booked him and transported him to jail. They put him into a tank where the other inmates immediately questioned him. Who was he? What was his paperwork? What was he in for? And one inmate in particular took him under his wing.
You know, I know my rights, man, you know. Cops don't really know what went down, so I ain't saying jack.
And police still have no idea what happened to the owner of the home. Since his early years growing up in Missouri, Clifford Lambert has taken care of himself.
He was an orphan. He had no family.
Clifford Lambert was adopted. And so, you know, Clifford Lambert had issues with depression, as most adoptees do.
As soon as he finishes college, Cliff leaves the small town in the dust.
He moved to New York City. He was a theater actor. But he said, if I'm not a star by 30, I'm gonna get into another line of work.
When his 30th birthday rolls around with no spotlight in sight, Cliff turns to his other passion, art.
Cliff loved art. He loved the art, he loved the art world. But he realized the reality of the normal person being able to afford to buy art, you know, was impossible. You know, only rich were able to buy, you know, priceless pieces of art and enjoy it.
Cliff resolves to change this.
Clifford created a technique that replicated oil paintings so that it didn't look like they were print, but they actually looked like they were real oil paintings.
He decided to create a mail order business called Lambert Studios.
Beautiful.
Before he knew it, it took off and he was off and running. He did it for years and years and years until he retired.
As he approaches 60, Cliff decides it's time to enjoy the fruits of his labor, starting with a lavish new home.
It was classic Palm Springs, high, well-manicured green shrubbery, two automatic gates for the driveway kind of went through the property. He had a garage and then a sort of a grand entrance. So you knew you were at Clifford Lambert's house when you pulled in.
He had beautiful paintings up and down the hallway.
He liked to show that he had money.
Yet money can't buy Cliff what he craves most, love.
I believe he was looking for companionship.
Oh, it's the second door on the right.
Eventually, Cliff finds just that with Trevor Smith.
Excuse me. I don't mean to seem too forward, but could I interest you in having a drink with me sometime?
How about right now?
Okay. Why don't you pour?
He was substantially younger than Cliff, so he was like, you know, he's really fun. Like, I want to know more about this person.
Within months, the romance deepens.
They were married at the top of some building in Canada. It was a very private ceremony. It was nothing big and splashy.
I'm the luckiest man in the world. Thank you.
They were going to live out their lives together and be happy.
For the next decade, the Lamberts' marriage is a dream.
They had a great life together.
But there is one thing Trevor loves more than Cliff.
He was an alcoholic, full out.
By 2007, the dream has become a nightmare.
He wanted to leave, and Cliff said, that's fine. If you want to leave, you know, I love you. I want you to be happy.
The Lamberts are soon divorced. Cliff is heartbroken. And his suffering is only beginning.
Cliff called me, he was crying, and Cliff never cried like that.
It's Trevor! He had money, he had a house, he had a Rolls Royce, he had everything, but he was still alone.
When wealthy art dealer Clifford Lambert's marriage sours, he's left divorced and embittered. Even surrounded by the best life can offer, Cliff is lost.
Cliff fell into a deep depression. He was very lonely.
Cliff was also hurt because he would go to the local bars and get drunk and talk a lot of lies and a lot of smack about Cliff. I'm like, you know, why did you let that happen? And he's like, well, because I loved him. Hello.
Then, a few months later, another blow.
What? Cliff called me, he was crying, and Cliff never cried like that. And I was like, Cliffy, what's wrong?
Eddie, it's Trevor. He drowned.
The toxicology reports came back and said that there was drugs involved.
Cliff was crying because he still loved this guy. And so it was very sad.
Clifford Lambert became very depressed. He was going through a hard time.
That hard time does eventually fade.
Good morning, Clifford.
Good morning. Voila.
Oh, somebody's happy this morning. Thank you.
I think I'm ready.
Ready? Ready for what?
It's time to move on.
Clifford, that's great. Well, let's find you the right man this time.
Eddie offers to help Cliff navigate romance in a new era.
Everybody is online now.
I was doing it. A lot of people do it. Everybody does it. Everybody.
You're gonna post a message, okay? There's really nothing more to it.
That sounds perfect.
It's great.
Clifford Lambert had posted ads online to have young, attractive men come spend a weekend with him, and if he in fact enjoyed their company, he would ask them to come back.
Cliff would fly people down from San Francisco or wherever and let him stay in his house in the spare bedroom. And, you know, Cliff was like, Eddie, I'm not flying these boys in to have sex with them. He's like, I want to get to know them. I'm 75 years old. We don't do that.
No, thank you.
Cliff was being naive because you don't do that. You don't know who these people are.
One day, Cliff was chatting online when he met Daniel Garcia. And after talking for a while, he invited Daniel to come to his house for the weekend.
At the time when he met Daniel Garcia, Clifford Lambert was really looking to fill that empty void of being alone.
Hey.
Hi.
And when his date arrives, he's even better than Cliff imagined.
Daniel Garcia was probably the most charismatic,
I'm glad you could make it.
fun, entertaining person.
Wow, you got a beautiful house.
At the time, he was 21, and he just knew so much about the world.
Daniel Garcia came across as very charming.
Hurry up, close the door.
The weekend passes in a blur of fine food, fine art, and fine conversation.
They spent some time together in the house. They went to dinners together, breakfasts together.
Improvise with limes.
Yeah, for sure.
Things are going well until Daniel makes a small request.
Cheers.
Cheers to you.
He wanted him to invest money in a business that he wanted to get going, StarTech.
Cliff, I wanted to talk to you about something.
Sure.
Well, I'm starting this computer company. And it's basically a program that helps track and report child predators online.
How to track them down, how to investigate, and how to report child pornography on the internet.
Is this why you came here? Were you even interested in me or just my money?
It's not like that, Cliff.
I think I'll retire early. I won't see you before you go, so goodbye.
Cliff,
You've said enough. Goodbye.
The next day, Daniel leaves without a word. Cliff is relieved. But when he checks his credit card statement, he finds a parting gift from Daniel.
What?
He ended up upgrading his return flight to first class on Clifford Lambert's credit card, unbeknownst to Clifford Lambert.
While the upgrade was only $16, Cliff's upset on principle.
He never seemed overly angry at people. He was always hurt by people. And he just seemed really hurt, like disappointed.
He believed that he could trust Daniel, but that trust was broken.
But his disappointment is soon forgotten in the face of an even greater betrayal.
His home was burglarized.
Cliff had a very substantial fur collection. And he's like, all the furs are gone. There were shadows around where the pictures were.
Cliff files a police report, even though he's convinced the theft was an inside job.
Before Cliff and I ever left, on our way to the garage, he would beep, 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 turn the alarm on, and we'd leave. Well, somehow, the alarm was turned off because it was supposed to go on when the doors were opened.
Except it didn't, and Cliff has an idea of who might be behind it.
This is very awkward, but can I ask you a question? Do you know anything about these break-ins?
Cliff started to question his maid. Well, you're the only one that cleans this house. So, and Cliff goes, Eddie, she took her keys, put them down on the desk, got her car and left. He goes, I haven't seen her since.
His prime suspect may have walked away, but Cliff hasn't seen the last of trouble.
What's happening?
He was starting to get scared. Cliff just became this target.
When art dealer Clifford Lambert's home is burgled, he files a police report, fires his maid, and installs a new security system. It's not exactly a good time for a visitor.
The second time Daniel Garcia visited Clifford Lambert, he arrived on his door with flowers.
We all just thought it was weird how Danny would just show up randomly in Palm Springs.
Cliff may think he's done with Daniel, but Daniel isn't done with him.
Hello?
Hey, Cliff. Hi, it's Danny. Don't hang up, please. Look, I just wanted to tell you I'm so sorry about the ticket. Look, how about I make it up to you? I can come over tonight and make you a nice dinner, and it'll give me a chance to explain everything to you. What do you say?
Fine, but dinner better be incredible.
Trust me, I don't think you'll be disappointed.
It's very common now for people to just kind of forget that they ripped somebody off, and they're like, hi, how are you?
You know, I'm so sorry about how I brought up the company last time. I mean, you know my history, so for me, it really wasn't about a business. It's really about a personal crusade, you know?
Daniel said he had been molested earlier in life by a wealthy San Francisco multi-millionaire.
That's how Danny Garcia got back into Cliff's life and justified himself.
I'm really sorry about what happened to you, Daniel. I truly am. But like I said before, I won't be investing, and, well, I just think that it's best that we don't see each other again.
Cliff may suspect Daniel is milking him for his money, but the truth is, there isn't much to get.
I'm really sorry you feel that way.
It was costing Cliff almost $10,000 a month to run that house.
Clifford Lambert, although he had a few $100,000 in his account, he was still in need of more money.
Cliff was running out of cash.
Not only that, his household soon takes a second hit.
I'm so sorry.
Oh. Eddie, I put the alarm on, right?
Yeah, you did.
I did, I put the alarm on.
I was concerned with Cliff's safety. It was the big house. There were many doors and many ways into that house.
With 2 break-ins and a bank account that's hemorrhaging cash, Cliff is struggling to stay afloat until an unexpected phone call changes his fortunes.
Hello?
Hello, am I speaking to Clifford Lambert?
Yes?
My name is Samuel Oren.
And I'm calling you in regards to an inheritance.
The one that was contested.
Mm-hmm.
Samuel Oren was a lawyer from New York City.
Well, it turns out you may be in line to inherit after all.
You don't say.
Cliff had been left a large inheritance from a friend years before, but it was contested, leaving Cliff with nothing.
Thank you.
Until now.
Thank you very much.
Samuel Oren claimed that the will was being reopened and that Clifford Lambert was actually an heir to the will.
Cliff and the lawyer meet the next night.
Clifford Lambert.
Yes.
I'm Samuel.
Hello.
And Cliff likes what he sees.
Clifford Lambert found Samuel Oren to be very charming. He was very taken with him.
Can I get a scotch neat? I don't know yet. Thank you so much for meeting me today.
Well, thank you for seeing me.
It's a pleasure.
Cliff is on cloud 9 until he gets home.
Cliff was starting to get suspicious. He was starting to get scared.
Hello?
Clifford Lambert received a call from Samuel Oren again, saying that certain paperwork had not been signed and they needed to get back together, and it was important that they did it quickly before he flew out to New York.
When Samuel Oren arrives, Cliff is hoping the meeting will evolve beyond business.
Are you in a rush?
This is the only place I need to be. Why don't you just tell me where I can go freshen up?
There's a washroom. First door on the right. Only place he has to be.
On December 6, 2008, Clifford Lambert did not show up to meet his friend Eddie Mulliken at the Festival of Lights parade.
We were standing where we were supposed to be standing, and my friend says, "Where is Cliff?" And I said, "What do you mean, where is Cliff?"
Cliff!
On his way home, Eddie stops by to check on Cliff.
I was the only one that had a key, so people always had to call me and ask me what was going on with Cliff if they couldn't find him. There were cocktails that were sort of watered down, looked like people were drinking. I said, if he's got a date, I'm not gonna go tearing in there.
But when he can't get Cliff on the phone the next morning, Eddie's concern grows.
Between Clifford Lambert being reported missing on December 7th and until the last week of December 2008, things were pretty quiet.
Then, at the height of the holiday season, police get a worrisome phone call.
A real estate agent in Northern California said that a man had come to him to sell Clifford Lambert's home. Because the distance was so far to Palm Springs, the real estate agent became suspicious, looked up Clifford Lambert's name on the internet, and realized he was a missing person.
Suspecting some kind of fraud, police turned to Cliff's attorney.
She filed an emergency protective order to prevent Cliff Lambert's assets from being sold off.
But she soon discovers that Cliff's bank account is nearly empty.
160.
So a total of about $160,000 was taken within a matter of 2 to 3 days.
Detective Min hatches a plan to flush out whoever is behind Cliff's disappearance.
Would you mind playing along with the sale so we can see what really is going on here?
We had to allow the sale to go through in order to identify the key players.
As the police dig deeper, they learn that Cliff's power of attorney has been signed over to a fellow art dealer, Russell Manning.
Russell Manning was an art dealer. He was a very legitimate, successful art dealer in San Francisco.
Russell Manning now had the ability to sell Clifford Lambert's house and to empty his bank accounts.
Except the paperwork was signed after Cliff disappeared.
There's a possibility that there's some suspicious activity involved.
And when San Francisco police go looking for Manning, he too is missing.
We need to track down the notary who oversaw the signing of this document. Okay, we need the original.
We called the notary. We asked him to come down to San Francisco Police Department where he can meet with detectives at the station.
Many states don't require a thumbprint for power of attorney, but California does.
The question is it Clifford's thumbprint? And if not, then whose is it?
He would tell people that he was the Prince of Nepal.
Yes?
He had this look of surprise. What's going on, you know?
It was very difficult to tell what was real and what wasn't.
Hello, I'd like to file a missing persons report for Clifford Lambert.
Palm Springs socialite Clifford Lambert has been missing for over a month, and suspiciously, his power of attorney has been granted to an art dealer named Russell Manning. The Palm Springs PD traced the original document to scrutinize the mandatory fingerprint. Police run the print, and their suspicions are confirmed. It doesn't match those of Clifford Lambert's taken from his house, but it's not Russell Manning's either. It actually belongs to a San Francisco lawyer named David Replogle, leading police to a new theory.
David Replogle posed as Clifford Lambert before a notary, and he signed power of attorney to Russell Manning.
The question is, why? Police issue arrest warrants for both Manning and Replogle, but have no leads on either man's location. And as police seek them out, another player springs Detective Min's real estate trap. One Kushal Narula, now in possession of the deed to Cliff's house, signed over to him by Russell Manning.
I Googled him, and his name was all over.
While Nepal native Kushal Narula is unknown to Palm Springs police, he's got a long history as a con man in California.
Kushal Narula was a storyteller. He would tell people that he was the Prince of Nepal and that his family had been exiled from Nepal.
And with that story, Narula blazed a path of cons for years. As Detective Min reads Narula's records, he sees a court date set for March.
So we knew where he was going to be at a certain time, date and time.
Kushal Narula.
Yes?
You're under arrest.
With no permanent address linked to his name, police arrest Kushal Narula at the courthouse.
Okay, can you at least explain to me why I'm being arrested?
He had this look of surprise. What's going on, you know? I'm here for my court case. What are you doing to me?
And he's not alone.
Kushal Narula was accompanied to court by David Replogle,
the man who forged Clifford's signature on Cliff's power of attorney.
Police went to arrest Kushal Narula and ended up being able to arrest both Kushal Narula and David Replogle.
But even with two men in custody, Cliff's whereabouts remain unknown.
Were you involved in the disappearance of Mr. Lambert?
Who?
Lambert. Clifford.
Kushal Narula did not admit to being involved in anything pertaining to Clifford Lambert.
During his interview, he tried to minimize his role. First, he tried to say that he had no idea, had never been to Palm Springs, which is a first indicator he was lying.
Do you have any idea who could have been involved?
I mean, I don't know. You know what? The only person who I always felt was a little off was a guy named Daniel Garcia.
Kushal was blaming everybody else but himself.
Wow. Thanks so much for flying me out here.
He was shifting the blame to Daniel Garcia.
On March 9th, 2009, police received a tip of a certain condo where Daniel Garcia could be located. They responded to the condo, and they found him there.
When Garcia speaks to police a week later, he points his finger back at his accuser, Narula.
Back when we were friends, he used to blame me for everything, so actually I'm not surprised.
His biggest alibi was the fact that he wasn't in Palm Springs at the time, which was true.
With both Narula and Garcia accusing each other, the police aren't sure who to believe.
It was very difficult to tell what was real and what wasn't, what was the truth, what wasn't, who was telling the truth and who wasn't.
Luckily for the cops, someone comes forward who is willing to tell the truth. Miguel Bustamante's cellmate.
Aren't you worried they're gonna find that Cliff dude? Nah. He's taken care of. What if he comes back? What? You believe in resurrection?
The particular inmate that Miguel Bustamante was confiding in was facing a life sentence. And he knew that one of the ways to try and negotiate a life sentence is to provide information to the police. So he called the police and he told him that he had information on Clifford Lambert.
I'm listening.
Well, I do something for you, you do something for me.
I need names.
I got names.
The information provided to us by the cellmate was very accurate because there were names of players of this scheme that nobody else could have known. It was a very big surprise to us.
While confiding in the other inmate, Miguel Bustamante did end up telling him that Clifford Lambert had been killed.
We knew that his body is going to be recovered as opposed to actually finding a person.
But the words of a jailhouse snitch can't be taken at face value. Investigators look to corroborate his claims, starting with a phone.
When Garcia was arrested, he was found with an iPhone. We conducted a forensic download on this iPhone. We found several thousand text messages.
The Palm Springs Police Department and Lisa DeMaria went through every single one of them.
It was evident from these text messages that Daniel Garcia and Kishal Narula were keeping in close, intimate contact the first week of December 2008.
The story behind Cliff's fate was years in the making. It begins with a lawsuit against a wealthy businessman.
When Daniel Garcia filed a molestation case, he'd been working with a lawyer named David Replegal, and it made national news.
The case resulted in a $1.5 million settlement for Garcia and caught the attention of a seasoned con man.
Kishal Narula, probably smelling con all around this, sought out Daniel Garcia and, in fact, tracked him down and had an interesting way of introducing himself by bumping into him and then saying that he recognized him.
But instead of conning him, Kishal becomes Daniel's partner in scams and in the bedroom.
Daniel Garcia and Kishal Narula sort of had this dysfunctional codependency to each other. One day they would hate each other. The next day they were arm in arm.
After a fight with Narula, Daniel Garcia sets his sights on Clifford Lambert.
It's really interesting. It's basically...
There's just one problem. Cliff refuses to give Daniel money.
Is this why you came here?
Daniel Garcia has spoken about starting many different businesses. I have never found any of them to be reliable, true, or credible.
When his plan backfires, Daniel Garcia turns to the man he calls his dark prince for help.
Daniel Garcia provided Kishal Narula with Clifford Lambert's address, with Clifford Lambert's social security number.
Daniel Garcia even provides Cliff's alarm code.
As long as you got the wine.
Cliff has no family. And his neighbors, he barely even talks to them. If you went missing for a little bit, I swear to God, nobody would even notice. I'm telling you, we could take anything we want.
We could get him to sign over all of his accounts to us.
Everything.
The men decide to kidnap Cliff.
It's perfect.
They called it Operation Craigslist. The initials of Craigslist are CL. Clifford Lambert's initials are CL.
Just tell him why, man.
Then they bring in some muscle.
He raped me.
So the story was that Clifford Lambert had raped Kushal and given him HIV, and they needed to plot the revenge.
I'm positive.
Positive?
HIV positive.
Kushal Narula went to his friend, bartender, Miguel Bustamante, and he brought him into the plan.
This guy has to pay for what he did, man.
Miguel Bustamante offers to take care of kidnapping Cliff for $30,000.
I'll take care of this.
Miguel Bustamante had a roommate, Craig McCarthy, and he asked him if he would go along, and Craig's like, sure.
I'll see you tonight.
The plan initially hinges on Daniel getting back into Cliff's good graces.
We're in.
Well, I just think that it's best that we don't see each other again.
But when that doesn't pan out, Kushal moves in.
Yeah, well, would it be possible for us to meet and discuss further details?
Clifford Lambert got a call from an attorney out of New York, Samuel Oren, which is in fact Kushal Narula.
All right. Okay, so as soon as I walk into the restaurant with him, make sure we're settled in, and then you text the boys to let them know that they can go into the house, and we should be fine. Would you excuse me for a second?
The next night, the men put their plan into action. But Cliff is a tougher mark than they first imagined, and the plan takes a much darker turn.
Kushal basically said, no, you don't have a choice. You're gonna do this tomorrow.
They were living a script from a spy novel.
When the plan to kidnap Clifford Lambert looks like more trouble than it's worth, masterminds Daniel Garcia and Kushal Narula decide murder is the best solution.
It became very clear that by the time the plan was unfolding, the plan was to murder Clifford Lambert, because there was no way to take over his entire life without getting rid of him.
Once things are in motion, Daniel Garcia leaves town.
His idea was, if I'm not there, I can't be implicated.
Meanwhile, Miguel and his roommate Craig wrestle with their new marching orders to kill, not kidnap, Cliff.
They're looking around for tools. They didn't go with anything to kill him with.
Craig McCarthy and Miguel Bustamante were supposed to have jumped out from their hiding spots and killed Clifford Lambert. When one didn't jump out, neither did the other.
What happened, man?
It's not my fault, all right? It's Craig's fault. He chickened out.
What's wrong with you, man?
So when Miguel Bustamante returned to meet with Kushal to give him the bad news that they had not, in fact, killed Clifford Lambert, Kushal basically said, no, you don't have a choice. You're gonna do this tomorrow.
I'll go meet him at the house. I'll make sure it's dark, and then I'll unlock the door for you guys. You go wait for us in the kitchen, okay? No mistakes this time.
Are you in a rush?
Cliff, there's nowhere else I need to be. Why don't you just tell me where I can go freshen up?
While Kushal Narula, posing as Samuel Oren, was at Clifford Lambert's house that evening, he did excuse himself, saying he needed to use the restroom. He went to the side door that comes off of the kitchen, and he allowed entry to Miguel Bustamante and Craig McCarthy. Craig McCarthy and Miguel Bustamante armed themselves each with a knife out of the butcher block.
What was that?
I don't know. Should we go look?
Clifford heard a noise in the kitchen. Unsure of why he would hear this noise, he went into the kitchen, only to find that there were two men lying in wait for him there.
Clifford Lambert lay on the ground, gurgling on his own blood as Miguel Bustamante stabbed him repeatedly in the back and in the back of his neck.
Good job. Make sure to take his wallet and the ring.
They rolled Clifford Lambert's body in bedding that they had taken from other bedrooms, and they put him in the trunk of his Mercedes.
Well, go bury it in the desert, I don't know. I don't even want to know where. Just deal with it.
And then they went to bury Cliff's body.
In the days following, the men take control of Cliff's finances.
Using a false ID, David Replogle assumed the identity of Clifford Lambert.
He signed power of attorney for Clifford Lambert's bank accounts and his entire estate, including his real property, to Russell Manning.
Russell Manning walked into the bank and withdrew $130,000, I believe, and then $36,000 on the second transaction. He was allowed to keep $5,000 of that money for his services.
Control is then handed to Daniel Garcia and Kushal Narula.
They took that money to Las Vegas. They proceeded to blow it.
With 4 men arrested and thousands of texts, the case is solid. But some loose ends remain.
Min.
After searching for Russell Manning with no success, Detective Min learns that he's been indisposed thanks to his business partners.
Once they were done with him, they sent him on a trip to Mexico, where he was then framed for possession of drugs.
To prevent him from talking to anybody.
With 5 men in cuffs, there's just one player at large. The last conspirator to find is Craig McCarthy, Miguel's helper.
Craig McCarthy was the only one of the murderers who expressed regret for what he had done. His conscience clearly kicked in, and he was the one who ultimately turned state's evidence.
Craig draws a map to tell police where he thinks the body is. But the desert is vast, with few signposts.
Unfortunately, we were never able to locate Clifford Lambert's body.
Even without a body, the case is strong thanks to Lisa DiMaria's diligence.
This ring of co-conspirators took over Cliff Lambert's life, literally. They drained his bank account, they used his credit cards, they took his house.
Lisa fought with everything she had, and to this day and to my last day, she will always be my hero.
Daniel Garcia is the mastermind of the plan because he is the connection to Clifford Lambert. Nobody else had a connection to Clifford Lambert. Kushal Narula had no idea who Clifford Lambert was until Daniel Garcia introduced that name in a conversation. David Replogle had no idea who Clifford Lambert was until he was introduced by Daniel Garcia.
Daniel Garcia, Kushal Narula, Miguel Bustamante, and David Replogle were all convicted of first-degree murder with special circumstances, among several other charges. All 4 of them have been sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Based on his plea agreement, Craig McCarthy was sentenced to 25 years in prison.
Russell Manning was charged with burglary, ID theft, false documents, and he was sentenced to 5 years.
As the bar slammed behind the killers, authorities are convinced that for Garcia and Narula, money wasn't the only motivation.
The men involved in this case acted as if they were playing parts in a Hollywood movie. It was as if they were living a script from a spy novel. They were driven by greed, money, material possessions, and they thought that their status was based on what they had versus who they were.
But when a friend is taken, the only thing left is memories.